Mi lengua, en especial para mí, tiene un gran significado porque es lo que yo hablo y cómo me puedo identificar a través del mundo. Es de donde yo he venido, son mis raíces.
Y por eso el español es parte de mi vida.
When it comes to the definition of language, people's answers often vary. Language serves many different purposes, from a means of communication to an expression of culture.
When each of you in this room were born, there were 6,000 languages spoken on the planet. Now, a language is not just a body of vocabulary or a set of grammatical rules. A language is a flash of the human spirit.
In recent years, however, the definition of language is often associated with power.
In Ecuadorian schools, we stood in front of a classroom with 40 children. They stared at us excited about these new gringas. By trying to teach these students our language, we realized how big an impact English has on this world. Spanish is spoken in all of South America except for Brazil, and around the world by 420 million people. But why are we, high school graduates, coming to South America to spread our language? Why is it currently economically, socially, and politically necessary to know English? This question led to an examination of the power dynamics between languages. Looking back in history, we found this scenario familiar, bringing a new language into a country using political and economic powers. With Christopher Columbus's discovery and conquista of South America in 1492, Spanish colonizers forced indigenous people into learning Spanish while their own languages along with their cultures were lost. The most common indigenous languages, Quechua, Quichua, and Aymara, survived in Ecuador and Bolivia, but are spoken to a much smaller extent after colonization.
Tal vez la raíz de todo esto es también un poco la parte económica, ¿no? Porque los españoles vinieron como con todo su poder sobre, y ahora se mueven otro tipo de poderes también.
People started to associate indigenous languages with poverty. Indigenous people are often oppressed and seen as inferior. As a result, precious languages that not only represent the people who speak them, but also their traditions and cultures behind them, are vanishing.
And of those 6,000 languages, as we sit here today in Monterey, fully half are no longer being whispered into the ears of children. They're no longer being taught to babies, which means effectively, unless something changes, they're already dead.
Today, the same disparity rises between English and Spanish, not due to colonization, but due to globalization. During our stay in Ecuador and Bolivia, we encountered a commercial world filled with imported Western products. Supermarkets and corner stores resembled what we were used to seeing at home instead of ones that represented the local culture. Globalization is the reason behind this.
Globalization has turned like geographic centers into the same thing, same chain stores, the same things. And then you're just like, what's different? Like, what's different? What's unique about this place, you know?
Laris Flores, the English teacher of Colegio Municipal of San Jose de Minas, explained that trade between South American countries and Western countries like the US encourages English learning since knowing it benefits employment and income levels.
Es muy importante. En países como Ecuador influye mucho porque las personas que sabemos hablar inglés tenemos más accesos a diferentes trabajos. Los últimos 10 años anteriores, yo pienso que el inglés ha ganado más fuerza aquí, especialmente desde cuando nosotros cambiamos nuestra moneda al dólar. Entonces parece que la gente se ha preocupado por aprender un poco más de la cultura americana, también de su influencia acá en el Ecuador y cómo nosotros podemos trabajar y hacer comercio con Estados Unidos. En este momento especialmente que el mundo está más globalizado.
According to the Office of U.S. Trade Representative, the U.S. exports to Ecuador increased by 407% from 2003 to 2013 and imports by 322%, leading to a total export of $7.3 billion and an import of $11.5 billion. U.S. exports to Bolivia have increased by 410% from 2003 to 2014, and its imports from Bolivia by 597%. Booming trade with English-speaking countries have made learning English imperative to global economic competition. In addition to providing economic motives, English also spreads Western cultural influence. Music, movies, and slang make the language desirable to learn by younger generations.
Porque más personas lo hablan, porque hay más libros en inglés, porque hay más información en inglés y por eso se vuelve más fuerte, más poderosa. De todas las películas que vemos, todos los libros, todas las series, todo está en inglés. Entonces eso que al final es igual nuestra cultura mundial, es muy influyente.
Los chicos están más interesados en aprender inglés.
English is it's a language that you should probably know because the world is kind of dominated by English at the moment. I mean, there's so many songs in English, movies in English, so.
The second thing is like a cultural thing, how it seems like people sometimes want to like practice their English, sometimes we're practicing it and sometimes just to say, look, I'm cultured, I know English, and you know that's quite telling.
Our host brothers, Santiago and Sebastian, are perfect examples of this. They prefer listening and singing English music to Spanish. When we asked why, they explained that it was, quote, cooler. So what does this all mean? Shift in language over time is, after all, a natural phenomenon. Historically, Latin, Greek, and French used to be universal languages due to their associated political and economic power. Today, 1.5 billion people speak English and 1.1 billion speak Chinese because of similar power dynamics. However, the problem isn't the shift in language, but the loss of language. About 6,500 different languages are spoken worldwide, and experts expect this number to decrease by 90% in the next 40 to 50 years. This makes us wonder how we can preserve language diversity. Fortunately, change is beginning to happen. Today, with Bolivian's President Evo Morales, the first indigenous leader after colonization, schools are beginning to teach native languages again to preserve culture. Also, in Ecuador, the government recently implemented a law to teach Quechua in schools.
If you don't have words, something you can't conceptualize something, and I think it can potentially be really negative in terms of when we bring our language and our development models and apply them to a community and say, well, according to my model and my terminology, this doesn't work, and yet my terminology and model is alien to them. So it's like, well, actually, the alien here is my model, and I need to educate myself to be able to actually be of any use and help.
Muchas formas de decir las cosas de forma diferente que solo pueden entenderse mediante la cultura. Entonces hay muchas palabras que no podemos entenderlas fuera del contexto y que no podemos tampoco traducirlas. Entonces es importante rescatar esas palabras porque no hay otras palabras que puedan tener el mismo significado cultural para las personas, como la chaya. Entonces es algo que solamente se entiende en el quechua y cuando lo hablamos en español o en cualquier otro idioma no hay una palabra para traducirla. La chaya es cuando nosotros agradecemos, es una ceremonia de agradecimiento a la Pachamama.
A universal language, yes, but not at the expense of losing the local language, because the local language has history, has memory, has so many other things.
And I know there's some of you who say, well, wouldn't it be better, wouldn't the world be a better place if we all just spoke one language? And I say, great, let's make that language Yoruba. Let's make it Cantonese. Let's make it Kogi. And you'll suddenly discover what it would be like to be unable to speak your own language.
Noelia says that if at one point it was socially acceptable to discriminate against someone who speaks Quechua, it is now socially unacceptable to say that someone who speaks Quechua is ignorant. She says that since now this is socially unacceptable, kids are no longer learning to discriminate. This is important because children are growing up in a new way. In 10 years, they are not going to have the same perspective as they do now. I don't think that one culture should be more or less important than another. The most beautiful thing would be if we all had the capacity to understand each other.
Ojalá que con esta ley que existe de educación intercultural, ¿sí? Respetando el quichua en especial, entonces se logre rescatar de alguna forma el hecho de que en las comunidades indígenas y también algunos mestizos aprendamos nuevamente el quichua.
Wade Davis states that this world deserves to exist in a diverse way. so that we can all find a way to live in a truly multicultural, pluralistic world where all the wisdom of all peoples can contribute to our collective well-being.
Entonces creo que vamos por buen camino. Que se rescaten las vidas y que todos podamos disfrutar de esto.
The question then appears, will the world reach a day when all languages evolve into one?
Our society is filled with temptations of short-term interest. It's necessary for us to recognize that today English occupies a significant role in leading the global economy as well as popular culture. It is a symbol of power, and not only are South American people learning English because of this reason, but we are doing the same.
Among the 3 girls in our media project group, 2 have decided to leave their home countries and receive an education in English taught abroad.
We listen to songs in English and watch Hollywood movies.
We adopt English in classes, leisure time and conversations.
We're learning English in part for study and employment.
We're doing so in order to become competent in the future world of economic opportunities.
English is everywhere, and it is hard to ignore the fact that it immerses itself into our mindsets.
However, we also recognize the difference between English and our mother tongue. English is a useful communication tool, but Spanish, German, and Chinese are languages of our hearts.
They're cultural, and they touch the deepest part of our origins.
It would be unimaginable to live in the world in the future where we wouldn't be able to pass on this valued heritage.
It was both relieving and exciting for us to witness the recent revival of indigenous languages, such as Quechua, which reveals a new aspect of language learning that does not fall into the economic norm. ¿Cómo te sentirías?
Get werden, you werden, and in Sprachen sus werden.
Bushen need the Yuyan.
Hopefully, rising appreciations of indigenous cultures can bring languages back to life. We wish to start from here to reach the end of a globalized world, where language learning is not solely about power and economic motives, but about human spirit and the richness of the diversity our world contains.
Spanish, German, and Chinese.
We listen to songs in English and watch Hollywood movies.
Hi, how are you doing?
2 of 3 went to study in different countries, yeah.